Seems like time just stares while I run around in circles, tripping on the main
Actor and
road.
performer Keiynan Lonsdale is known for exploring identity and
I
self
know
expression
time
both
is
on and
passing
off screen. You've
me,
seen him in Love
missing
Simon and
every
as Kid Flash
word.
on The
Cause
Flash and Legends of
eventually I'll
Tomorrow. Growing up in Western Sydney as the
graduate.
son of a
Catch a train
Nigerian
the
father
rest
and
of
an
them
Australian mother, he often
years.
felt
Cause
visibly
he's
different,
dancing
an
in a
experience that would
different
later shape his
world.
artistry and his journey
I
towards self
wonder if
acceptance.
you
In
like it when
2017, he began
there's
sharing his truth
friends
publicly,
say I
and in
should cut 'em
2022, he came
off,
out
but
as gay.
sometimes it's just
Today, he's also
easier.
speaking out about sexual health as part of Healthy Sexual's PrEP
If
campaign
I cry
with Gilead
myself out
Sciences,
of my
using his voice to help break stigma and
tears,
empower people to
if I
live
show these
fully and
feelings to
honestly.
my
Owning my sexual health is
friends.
part of how I express my power and pride. As an active 33-year-old man, I understand the importance of staying informed and having honest conversations with partners and healthcare providers. That's why I'm teaming up with Gilead to help break down HIV stigma and help make these conversations easier. Talking about HIV and prevention can feel uncomfortable, and I'm still learning how to talk about it myself. The more we talk, the more comfortable these conversations become. I get tested to know my status. I understand my HIV prevention options, and I'm choosing to speak up so others can too. When you take charge of your sexual health, you help empower a stronger and healthier community. Talk to your healthcare provider today and visit healthysexuals.com to learn more.
Keiynan Lonsdale, hello, hello.
Hello, Tony.
How are you, my friend? How are you in Australia? Where are
Hello.
you these
I'm in
days?
Australia.
We have much to discuss, but when people see you now, this confident, creative, expressive individual, it can seem that you sort of arrived fully formed. What do you make of your life and who you are living that life today, right now?
I really love my life. I've done a lot of work in the recent years, and it's probably a huge part, definitely why I moved back to Australia more full time, because I needed to reconcile with how I came up and who I was before the perceived arrival.
Yeah.
And I've had so many blessings in my life, and I wasn't that present for them. And so I was like, shit, I've got to figure this out, because I know that I deserve to be happy, and to continue to make more joy and do more good things in the world. And so I really like fought for that, and have done a ton of sort of internal work in different areas. And so I can proudly say that I'm in love with my life, and I just take each day as it comes, and I'm focusing on one step at a time in terms of all the things that I want to improve. I'm a really, really, like, I'm a hard worker, and I'm working on being a smart worker.
Love
Uh,
that.
so I'm not constantly in survival mode. I'm learning how to thrive, and
Mm.
that I deserve to. So
Yeah.
I just keep my favorite thing has always been, since I was a kid, was just to study and learn and grow and never stop growing. And that keeps me sane.
When you think about yourself outside of work, outside of being an actor, outside of being an artist, a musician, who would you say is Keiynan these days?
I'm very chill, like, as much as I'm very determined. It's the way I grew up. Like, I grew up in the suburbs out in Western Sydney. It's kind of the hood, single mom, like, family was chaotic, and there was a ton of, I've got so many siblings, and there was a lot of chaos around us. But I think also it's quite chill. What we value is like quality time.
Yeah.
People are very, very present and in the moment. And so I think, yeah, I'm super normal, potentially boring. I
Boring's not a
think,
bad thing. I think boring means
I
very
love
different
it.
things for people like you and myself. I completely get that.
Yeah, I just mean like, I stick to myself a lot. I do have to remind myself to make sure I kick it with my friends, and make sure I'm getting, like, I'm spending enough time with my family. But I love alone time, and like reading and chilling out, and every now and then playing my video games. Like I love to just travel and learn about the world and learn about people and sort of wonder. And I feel like I'm in this space where I can get away with being unnoticeable. You know, I can be fairly invisible. Um, and then it always reminds me and shocks me when like maybe people will be like, "Hey, I loved you in that thing." Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love to wonder.
What was young Keiynan like before the fame, before the labels? Just a kid trying to figure things out, figure himself out.
I didn't have a stable household, there wasn't a father figure. You know, I had a stepdad around, but you know, he specifically was not going to be my father figure. And my biological dad wasn't around, so it was just very confusing. Food was difficult. We barely had food in the house. And all I had was Michael Jackson on the TV and the love of my mum. And
Mm.
I loved dressing up in her clothes when my brothers weren't around, and I loved putting a bandana on my hair and like making it seem like I had long hair. But I also loved to play with toy cars and, you know, watch action heroes blow shit up on screen and dance to Michael and Janet.
It sounds like your mom was supportive in her own way as well.
Big time. She was like, "Oh, this kid doesn't really talk, he doesn't socialize, but every time I play Michael or Janet Jackson, or every time they're playing on the TV, he's dancing and he comes alive." So she was like, "I'm putting him into dance classes," and I really
Mm.
associated the idea of performing and success with like I can get my mum a house one day and I can change our situation and we can have as much food as we want and people should get along and we should be equal and yeah, it really instilled a lot in me and my mum allowed me to dream as big as possible.
That's really powerful because, like, from what I just heard, is you not only saw yourself and your story and situation reflected back to you, but you saw a path forward, a solution through that hardship and challenge at the same time.
So lucky. It just meant that like kids could bully me or I couldn't maybe I didn't fit in or whatever, but I was just like I know where I'm going. I realized a lot later in my life just how fortunate I was to be able to dream safely and openly. That was actually a very rich experience.
When did you first realize you began to see yourself as different by the world around you?
Straight away, because like as early as I can remember, because within my own household, I was different to my siblings. I had a different dad to them, and their dad, that was our lives. Like he very clearly was not going to treat me the same way. I always felt othered, like within the house, and that was tough. Like you know, my mum struggled with that, and obviously she didn't want that, and she did a lot of work to make sure the siblings supported me as well. So I think it just played out in interesting ways. And as I
Yeah.
said, once we got outside the house, they made me really feel like I was their sibling.
Just to stand
Yeah.
out, even in your own family, is that's its own
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, I was the African one, you know, and they knew I was very girly and sensitive, and I danced, and then at 8 or 9 years old, I met my father, and he had brought more siblings over from Nigeria, and suddenly I'm like meeting them, but now I'm the Australian one, and they're the Nigerians, and it was always very strange. And then, you know, I'm at dance school, and I'm the only boy, or I'm at a lot of places and I was the only black one. So it was a lot of like feeling like a total alien.
When do you feel like there was that shift from feeling that otherness and being able to start to own that otherness and begin to really take up space for yourself?
It's a couple of things. One of them is definitely doing like when I was part of the dance community, people made me feel like that was a great thing. And, you know, I did a ton of competitions almost every weekend. So I would work the whole week, you know, do my school focus, but like it'd be about like, I'm going to perform this number on Saturday and I'm going to bring home that trophy and like, you know, and then I think eventually I got a scholarship to an amazing performing arts high school called Brent Street. It's like it's the biggest in the country and I think they have their own documentary now like about the school. So I got a scholarship there, and like that was, it was kind of like going to the fame school. You had half the day was academics, the other half of the day was performing arts. But then even there, those kids were kind of like, you're weird. Like at lunchtime, you still are practicing, and that's weird.
Yeah. Even
And
though
I
you're
was
all in
like,
this environment together.
I'm the poor kid from over there that got this secret scholarship that I couldn't even tell them about. So like I'm
Of
pretending
course.
like I've kind of maybe got money. I'm not leading on that I'm like as broke as we are. And but that school was very, very empowering. We would do professional gigs essentially, and I was in heaven, for me. Like I didn't care if whatever politics was like, whatever.
When you are expressing yourself in these ways through music, through photography, acting, fashion, what do those creative outlets give you?
Today I had this moment where I like was you after the shower, I, like had my towel and I created like this dress, and I was doing this whole moment, I was filming it and everything. It was really like quite spicy, and I was like, oh, I feel like this was like feels wrong, but also I like haven't lived in that like I haven't oozed in that feminine power in quite a while. I feel kind of bad, but it feels amazing and I feel free, like I feel like I just reminded myself that I don't have to be
You went through the
Robo
full
robot.
emotional cycle coming out of the
Yeah.
shower. Is
It's a spiritual experience, and we're limitless, and we can see that with the advancing of technology, and we can see that with how our culture changes and shifts. The arts, for me, channeled correctly, expressing from honesty, it's like, it's beyond logic.
the ability to experience yourself daily is something that so many people miss with everything going on.
Yeah, 100%. And I spent some years kind of missing it myself, and I think I needed to go through that to realize what we're all kind of dealing with in different ways. It was very much a privilege to be able to be an artist and always express, and I didn't know why everyone didn't do it.
You were a hugely popular character for CW shows, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. You were 25 at the time, and you were also posting some very honest stuff on social media at the time. What was your life like at that time?
Yeah, I think I was 22 and I booked my first film overseas, and then 23 when I started The Flash. So by the time I'd come out, I had been on the show for a couple years, and it was right after I'd also filmed Love, Simon. So everything was happening at
Mhm.
the same time. I'm playing this superhero. I'm starting to get bored with my own limiting beliefs, it wasn't just inhibiting me from, you know, my sexuality, but I was so anxious I didn't go to coffee shops or grocery stores. They terrified me. But I was like, shit, I'm becoming like m more well known and more famous. So strangers are coming up to me in the street, and I can see in their face they realize how socially awkward I am. I was determined to get out of my shell in general. And I didn't know it was leading me to coming out. I was just like, I can't do whatever prison I've built is not going to work. So my life was very confusing, but then it just started to become, when I leapt into the unknown, it just became this totally unexpected whirlwind of life smashing me in my face. It was so colorful. It was amazing to be able to be honest and to rewrite my own story. I had planned to
Mm.
maybe come out when I was like 70. I was going to do that. The classic thing I said, no, I'm going to do the career and then I will eventually, go
Yeah.
off into the woods, find a partner and stay there in quiet. So I was very happy to have changed that narrative. There were people that came before us that have done that. I think I was also realizing how much life I was missing out and that, the world around me is actually really opening up and changing. In ways, I became a poster boy for being out and nothing could have really prepared me for what that experience was going to be like as well. And very, very special, very special, very, in some ways, like very conflicting and confusing. And yeah, I had to learn how to figure out how to live my life again, give myself permission again.
Was there a moment when you realized you couldn't keep living half hidden anymore? Was there a moment, or was this like a culmination of sort of where you were at in life at that time?
It was such a culmination. I mean, I had a boyfriend actually for a couple of years, like in private, like friends knew, but and that wasn't really fully working out. I wasn't happy at work doing this amazing thing. I'd also been like this kid who had a very straight and narrow path of like, I'm going to be a great performer and I'm going to be perfect and I'm not going to do anything wrong. And I think I started to realize the importance of the party in a way,
Yeah.
like, because I was so strict to myself and that was just so liberating. It showed me something, again, just like art. It was like an art to itself.
The millennial gaze would probably recognize you most from Love Simon. What do you make of your career evolving alongside your journey of self-discovery?
It's really difficult to explain to people. It's such a
Yeah.
trip. Like I feel like such a tripper sometimes, to be honest. And uh, I think now I've made peace with it, the wackiness of the whole thing, like I always end up learning so much from a character. I always end up taking something. For me, it was fun because I'm like, oh, I can act like this.
Mm.
I can act like that. Some characters that are going through some more maybe traumatic spaces, like, I've found that I've healed things that I've been avoiding through them too. And Love Simon was one of those. I was in the closet, still going to work, afraid of being outed, like my normal day to day. I look back at that time and it just it melts me because I'm like, it's very cute.
It's always fascinating to hear you shared what was actually going on, because it's not always having those characters or projects in parallel may not always be to your benefit. It sounds like at times it was painful. It was a hindrance to your own self-discovery.
Definitely. There was I played a role for the Step Up series 2021 where I guess I didn't have enough tools, but like I found myself back in it again, back confused, back scared of people around me, and I hated it. I hated that feeling. But I came out of that job so strong, and changed.
We live in a culture that's so obsessed with labeling people, whether by race, by sexuality, by identity, typecasting, if you will. Have you felt suffocated by any of these projections?
I felt suffocated when I was sort of doing, like, I guess, as I said, I felt like a bit of a poster boy for coming out and being out, but I didn't have many experiences of being out. I hadn't really been living my life. So I felt
Mm.
suffocated by like doing a ton of interviews and photo shoots and being asked questions, so often and realizing I don't have these conversations like with friends. I haven't explored these things. I don't know. And so I felt, but it was
Mm.
kind of like I'd gone into this machine now. I just kind of kept going because um people love a story and and I was quite bold in some of my choices
Yeah.
and I'm a performer, so but I found that really quite hard and painful at one point. I didn't know how to get out of it, and it was thanks to some friends where they were like, "You can stop and you can go and disappear and you can go and do whatever you need to live your life and be quiet or to, like reconcile with what's kind of happened." Because yeah, I hadn't, and suddenly it came out, it was also public, and then and everything was public, and
Yeah.
I needed to come home to myself and find what community meant to me. I didn't know how to navigate things safely. I didn't know how to
Mm.
navigate sex safely. I didn't know how to navigate saying no. I didn't know how to navigate, having that attention on me in public spaces and, guys and that was very tricky and it was quite embarrassing to be honest.
It sounds like also there was a moment that you realized your silence wasn't actually helping you and it wasn't protecting anybody around you.
Definitely. Yeah. It was a much easier when I, started. I just needed to learn what that community was where I felt like safe to have those conversations. And,
Yeah.
um, you know, yeah, I was very much avoiding.
What do you feel is maybe for other people who might feel that they're in that space, that the discomfort, what do you feel is kind of that first step to unlocking that shame for folks?
It's respecting yourself in the sense that like you are the most important thing, like your health, your life and taking care of you rather than what other people think about you or might think about you. It is empowering and it is cool and you will feel better and more confident. It's weird and it's uncomfortable, but it's just like growing pains. Coming into a life that you can feel you live fully and transparently and you learn along the way what to keep. It's not about pleasing everybody else. Joining the Healthy Sexuals campaign and like Gilead was really a timing thing. I had just, maybe 3 months prior to our conversations started taking prep again and I felt empowered to be on that journey and also like new-ish again and I felt like a little less pressured to feel like I know everything and basically being honest about my journey, which is that I had avoided uncomfortable conversations which can lead you to dangerous spaces and places and more fear and confusion and I didn't really want that for my life. So I wanted to feel more empowered and comfortable taking breath and then talking about it more openly and definitely happy for more people in my community to feel more comfortable doing that and taking that. And I think for me, just over the years, just having friends, who live with HIV and learning about their experience definitely, grounded my relationship to it all. And, I care about, what my community and I have gone through and go through. And, we're a very loving community. We've got we talked about the power of the party and liberation
Yep.
and sex. It's very powerful and it should stay that way. And I think, the fact that there are things that can help us and protect us is super key.
Yeah, there's still a lot of stigma, around sexual wellness and care. This idea that you can be judged for being on PrEP when you're just taking ownership over your health, for example. There's still some
Yeah,
work to do.
the act of sex has been attacked from many different angles for a long time. Like this is thousands of years, however many years, sex has been attacked. The life-giving, like source and
Mhm.
power. And so, like as humans, we're all very sensitive to that, and I hold a lot of space for people trying to navigate it too. And I think it's just that and having grace and saying it's okay that I might feel uncomfortable. It's okay that other people are afraid too, but doesn't mean I can't do the work to normalize it.
Okay, last question we got here together.
Yeah.
For the young Keenans out there, a kid who might feel different, unseen, unsafe, what would you tell them about who they're allowed to become?
They can decide what the very best version of themselves is, and they can work towards that every day. And you'll be surprised at how far you can go, and even other versions of yourself that you didn't know was possible. It's keeping your mind open and knowing that you really are worth what you dream,
Mm,
no matter where you come from, you are. And some of the most impressive and exciting, and loving people around the world have come from such tough backgrounds and confusing spaces and that to me is what it is to be human. We can imagine and we can create and then we can make it happen. It's not easy, but we can do it.
Keenan, I appreciate you. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Ciao.